Hello, my dear colleagues. Welcome to this online course. As we are here in Switzerland, I think we start right on time, but I know that people are coming in while we are starting this course. My name is Priska Fleischlin. I'm the IFSW Global UN Commissioner. That means I'm leading a team of 20 people who represent social work to the United Nations. We do that in Geneva, in New York, in Bangkok, Nairobi, and we are also looking for representatives in Santiago de Chile. All of those 20 representatives have a social work background and they do it as a volunteer. We are part of IFSW, the International Federation of Social Workers. And we are going to explain during the course a bit more about social work, about IFSW. I'm sitting here at the office of IFSW, which is based in Switzerland, in Rheinfelden. And what you can see just behind me is the archive of IFSW. It's a history of around 100 years social work. It's really interesting to have a look at all these documents about the history, how social work has been developed, and how many people contributed to social work in all those years and centuries. The collaboration with the United Nations has been a topic through all these decades. It was always a high interest in having a close collaboration with the High Commissioner on Human Rights Office, but also with other UN agencies. So I'm really glad to have this course right here and connecting IFSW and OHCHR. I think we can say on both sides, we are glad to connect and looking forward to closer collaboration. Why? Well, we will ask this question Rory Jewell, the General Secretary of IFSW, and Pradit Weigel, Head of the Economic, Social and Cultural Rights section at the OHCHR, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Afterwards, my colleague, Youngrin Kim from OHCHR will give us a good insight in the topic from her side, and Vasilios Iokamadi and Konstantinos Rousseau will present their research on social work as human rights defenders. But before that, let me just build up a bit this room that we are in. There are about 450 people who registered for this course. And I know that still people are coming into this course, but I also know that many people have will watch the recorded version later on because of the time zones or because of working conditions. That's all fine. We have this online course, and I think since COVID, all of you are really aware of how that works, and many of us will do something separate to this course and might do some ironing or cooking or other activities, and that's all fine. I just ask you to also respect that that we have this environment and also need to have this concentration in this room. And so people who are not active, please mute your microphone. And those people who want to say something, please wait for the Q&A session that we have at the end of this course. And you can always also write something in the chat, so I will collect all of your questions and ideas for the later discussion as well. So people are still coming in, and I think we can now raise the question of why is it good to have this collaboration from the two organizations. And I'm glad to have Rory Jewell here at the Secretariat of IFSW. So Rory, welcome.
Thank you, Priska. Okay, so well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Looking at the screen, I can see we've got people from all over the world, as far from Switzerland where we are as you can get. Hello, Kia ora Rose. In New Zealand, many people, many friends. Lovely to see you all. This is a really wonderful opportunity for us all, I think, for our profession, also for the Office of the High Commissioner. we all want the same thing. We all want to respect the dignity and promote the rights and of all people in the world. And it's really important that we do that by working together, because I think we all agree that no one organization can take the responsibility of promoting all people's human rights. So the more collaboration we have, the more we can learn from each other, the more we can find ways to interact with each other at every level, at the global level, the country level, and the local level, the more effective we'll be. And I'm just really aware that when we're talking about human rights, sometimes we're actually talking about just recognizing people as human. I was very struck in a conversation I had just before the pandemic hit in Uganda, where I was talking with a gentleman who'd spent 4 years walking through different countries in Africa and to arrive in Kampala in Uganda. And the gentleman said, the first person in 4 years to recognize that I was human was a social worker. And I said, what did the social worker do? And he said, well, the social worker sat with me and we talked and we drank coffee together. And the social worker was so interested in my journey and how I'd survived my journey and what I did to contribute to my journey and how I might have helped others and how others may have helped me. And to recognize those human interactions. I wasn't a refugee, I was a human at that moment on. And that person stayed then in Uganda with the support of social workers. So sometimes talking about human rights, we're just talking about that such a fundamental level of just recognizing people's dignity, recognizing their humanness, recognizing their pain, recognizing their strengths. And I think this is something that social work can really bring. There's lots of social work narratives and stories of how we work with people to actually realize their rights. And sometimes the realizing rights isn't a matter of just governments realizing rights, it's also communities and neighborhoods and families also recognizing the rights of other people and recognizing their own rights. And I think this is the spirit, the kind of wisdom that we've generated in social work from the ground up, from the community up, which we can bring to our dear and very valued colleagues in the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights. We think it's absolutely fundamental to have a partnership with you, an ongoing relationship with you. And that is because together we can develop key strategies of working in a kind of a pincer maneuver. The UN primarily works, or mostly works, with its member states and its government. I know that your office in particular works beyond that. But in many cases, the United Nations has a prime focus on working with its member states, and you try to hold them accountable to the accords that they have signed. But we also can hold them to account from the ground up in the communities that they administer over. And so, if we can get our language right, if we can find common narratives to reinforce holding those governments to account, I think then we'll be much more effective in our strategy. And I should say it's not just governments holding to account, also some of the environments in which social workers work, some of our own social services, whether they be NGOs or government services, holding them account to recognizing and promoting and realizing the rights of people that come through those social services or NGOs. Not just providing humanitarian aid, but going beyond humanitarian aid to recognize that people have strengths and can advocate for their own rights, which is a key part of social work. So I'm just so delighted that we're meeting today as two different agencies with a great group of people that are going to participate in this conversation. I really want to thank our colleagues in the Office of the High Commissioner, Pradip Vagel and Jungrin Kim, and all your colleagues that are supporting this process. I also really want to thank our IFSW colleagues who have made this possible and are continuing a series with each of our commissions. And for today, really big thanks to Priska and Sybil and others from the IFSW UN Commission. And also we have here Vasilios Archimedes from our Education Commission and to your team. And then we have, in addition, other IFSW commissions that will be playing a role as this program evolves, and that is from our Ethics Commission, Indigenous Commission. So this is the start of something new for IFSW and holding these programs in partnership with others. And I wish all of the organisers the greatest success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rory. It's good to see you in person and starting this session together here at the office of IFSW. And now have the pleasure to ask Pradeep Weigel why he supports this collaboration of OHCHR and IFSW and holding this course together. Thank you, Pradeep.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think in Asia it's already evening. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for bringing me in, and thank you for all your work. The importance cannot be explained in a next 2 or 3 minutes. It is the reality that we live in now, which is much more brink and so difficult. The lives of people are affected in many ways. You know, when we were starting the work as an office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in 1993, there were much more optimism and much more hope. Things were better than we live today. There were less wars and conflict, less social problems, less economic problems, less political problem, I would say. But the challenge now we face affects people's life on a daily basis. Right? We talk about more people being hunger than in 2003, more people being homeless in compared to last 20 years. There's so much difficulties that people are facing. One of our objectives is even I think Rory has rightly pointed out that we work with a number of partners, including the government and non-governmental actors. Our objective is to bring positive changes in people's life, whether working through people, working through organizations, working through governments, working through civil society. It has not been a challenge-free work, but what we look at, given the experience we have, is this is the area of work that we are embarking, which is all economic, social, and cultural rights, is not possible to do alone. A collaboration is very, very important, and although the part of collaboration that we are embarking with your organization is new, the seeds of partnership we started long ago. We work on, as I said, in various human rights like social protection, poverty alleviation, healthcare, education, right to culture, water sanitation, food security, and more. We have witnessed from our work firsthand an important role that you play as social workers in advancing human rights, both protection and promotion, particularly economic, social, and cultural rights. Your efforts to ensure that everyone can access essential services, participate fully in society, and live the lives with dignity are very, very important for us. With the expansion of our work since last year on economic, social, and cultural rights, which was primarily driven by the work of the High Commissioner through his report, vision report to promote economic, social, and cultural rights, it became evident for us that we needed to broaden our horizons and engage with new partners. It was a natural progress to turn to our attention to social work, the social work that you have been doing, to recognize, to understand challenge and build partnership where possible, and share our commitment to uplift the marginalized people, the vulnerable population, and ensure access to all human rights for everyone. Many of many of us, including in our field, we feel that our work is not recognized. But we must understand that the changes that we are bringing in people's life cannot be compared. We're just not the facilitators. We are a catalyst for change. Whether it is advocating for policy reform, identifying human rights abuse, or providing support to victims, social workers are at the front of the fight for justice and equality, which are two fundamental objectives of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They bridge the gap between policy and practice, leveraging their expertise and experience to effective and positive outcomes. We have been in conversation with the International Federation of Social Workers, and our partnership is building. We aim to embark on a mission to redefine the role of social work within the human rights framework. Our aim is twofold. One is to raise awareness among social workers and the public about inherent connection between social work and human rights, and also to help social workers with the tools and knowledge they need to be effective agents for change. We are committed to build capacity of social workers. This is one of the initiatives, and we'll be very happy to go along and explore further possibilities in the future, and also to advocate for the rights of those they serve, and to actively contribute to the human rights mechanisms at local, national, and international level. I'm sure together we can build a future where human rights are not just an ideal, but a reality for everyone. I'm very excited to see all your participation. I want to thank you so much and wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradit. Thank you. Thank you, Pradit, and thank you, Rory, for Rin and me. The two of you have been the important person who allowed us to start this collaboration and have this course. We were in touch with you and asking you whether this is okay and in line with your goals, and both of you supported us in our work. Thank you so much. I think all what both of you have said is really so touching for me also as a social work practitioner, and I think for many of you who are also social work practitioners, it's so touching to see, you know, how close we are together, seeing this very global level, but also the kind of the field work that we do is really connected together, and that brings us all on the same page, and so makes us strong, and having this global change and being an agent for change. Rin, I think that is what we were looking for also with this course, and providing more insights for our colleagues, how they can connect social work, like I said, the work we do in the field, but also bringing that to this really global level of all those instruments that OHCHR can provide. And you're now giving us a bit of a information how the course will work, but then also you can tell me when I should start the presentation, and how I should go on with the slides. So then I pass it to you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Priska, and hello to everybody. And I see the chat box that you are sharing your greetings to your colleagues and to each other. So that is very encouraging. And then let me just briefly introduce the course that we will be, going together for the next 4 weeks. So as you know, this is a 4-week online course that the IFSW and then OHCHR are jointly preparing and conducting in the next 4 years. Next 4 weeks. And from this week, we will meet every Wednesday from 11 o'clock in Geneva and CET time for 1.5 hours. The course is composed around 4 main topics with presentations by colleagues from our office and also IFSW. and followed by interactive dialogue between speakers and participants. So I was a little bit worried. I'm happily worried to learn that more than 300 people registered, so that it may be a bit difficult to to interact. But I see that is also includes the live participation and also the afterwards participating through the watching the video, the recorded video. So that, and I think that for the time being around 70 people, and we are pretty much manageable to have some good conversations afterwards. So that is very nice. So in the first week today, we will discuss about the human rights framework and its relevance to social work. So myself and Vasilios from IFSW will make presentations, and then we will discuss a little bit about these topics afterwards. And then the topic for the second week, which will be on the 1st May, is understanding the UN human rights mechanisms and using them for the benefits of people we support. So Wan Hee Lee from our office and Jane Shears from IFSW will make presentations and then following the same format. And for the third session, which will be on 8th of May, we will put our knowledge and experience in practice with a presentation by Rose Henderson from IFSW. And on 15th of May, for the final session, we will focus on indigenous people's rights. So we will deepen our understanding about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and its implications and implementations, so that the colleagues from our office and IFSW will share their expertise and experience on the ground to support the indigenous peoples. So it is very encouraging to see many colleagues have shown their interest and actually attended, and many of you actually attend this meeting now. We look forward to your active participation and many questions and comments from you on the course. And then this, we believe, Priska and I believe that this is just the first course of many to come in the coming years. So that, yeah, we are very excited and thrilled to see what's going to happen in the next 4 weeks. Thanks a lot. So with this note, then shall we start my presentation, Priska? Okay. Thank you so much. Well, today I'm going to make a short presentation on the human rights framework and its relevance to social work. And then the presentation, next slide, please. Yes. So that today, I'm going to ask ourselves around 4 questions. So that the why is the human rights framework important for social workers, and what are the human rights, and what is so pertinent, what is so unique about the human rights framework, and why our social workers are so important for the realization of human rights, especially the economic, social, and cultural rights that we are working on in the office. The next slide, please. So the first question, why is the human rights framework important for social workers? I will give you 10 to 15 seconds to think about why is it so important to you. And you are free to write your views and ideas in chat box. Then you can see what you are thinking and how you are interacting in this presentation. The next slide, please. Before preparing this presentation, I visited the website of IFSW, and then the page showed the global definition of social work, and which was adopted not long ago, but I think it was around 2014. So that was approved by IFSW and IASSW, the big institutions of the social work professions. And then actually, this webpage actually humbled me a lot. and then what efforts and then the emphasis the social work field have put on the human rights, and then try to link their work to the human rights. So that when you are thinking what what new thoughts or the innovative ways of work we should pursue, then we usually go back to the origin of our work. And I think that this definition of social work provides a lot of insights for our work as social workers and human rights workers, and also our collaboration as well. The definition goes, social work is practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. And importantly, the principles of social justice, human rights, collective responsibility, and respect for diversities are central to social work. Underpinned by theories of social work, social sciences, humanities, and indigenous knowledges, social work engages people and structures to address life challenges and enhance well-being. So this definition may be amplified at all levels, like national, regional, and local, and international level. And then it was very also encouraging to see the interpretation of this definition through the commentary notes for the global definition of social work. And that it highlights that the advocating and upholding human rights and social justice is the motivation and justification for social work. The social work profession recognizes that human rights need to coexist alongside the collective responsibility. And well, I really want you to visit this page and to go through the definition and the interpretation of the definition yourselves. And then a little bit, think over what this means to us and to our daily work. And it, actually, to be quite honest, it's given me a lot of thoughts on my work as a human rights officer, because that really, broadens my thinking on human rights a little bit more, broader and inclusive, and to encompass in other philosophy or values coming from other than the human rights framework. And I think that is something that social work can bring in to the human rights framework. So that this is very inspiring. And then you already have it already, why the human rights framework is important to social workers. You have the answer, and then you also have the explanation about that. And I think that my presentation today about the human rights, the normative framework, just to complement what we already have, and then to make it more concrete and more closely related to the work that we are trying to do. Okay, thank you. The next slide, please. So what are human rights? And then in the next slide, then you will see the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now I will give you 30 seconds to write, and then about human rights that you know of, that you heard of, or you worked on. Right. Well, unfortunately, I cannot see the chat box myself, but I'm sure that you are writing something, in the chat box. So that when you look into the Universal Declaration, and here are, some examples that are contained in the Universal Declarations. So are those rights familiar to you? Yeah? So, or no? Right. So that,
yes, they are familiar.
oh, great. Yes, yes. Yeah. And then, yeah, they are familiar. and some are more familiar to you than others. So that let's see, equality before the law, right to work, right to food, right to health, right to water, right to housing, right to social security, trade union rights, right to education, or the freedom of assembly, the freedom of association, freedom of religion. Yeah, so that those, and I think that you are, mostly familiar with all, these rights, written in this screen. And then some of you also mentioned about other international human rights, the instruments in the chat box. So yeah, that's right. And then the next slide. Yeah, so that I just try to list of the human rights that are contained in the declaration and also other human rights instruments. As I mean, as mentioned in the complementary notes for the global definition of a social worker, when you read it, and then it has a little bit of explanation about the evolution of human rights. So the first generation, second generation, and third generation. Actually, all the human rights are universal, interdependent, so that actually we should not divide all the human rights by one category or another, but this is the way how the human rights, the concept and the framework has evolved, so that I just, to present it as it is. So that there is several groups of human rights, so to say, but they are not divided in nature. But the development of human rights made the rights divided in a bit. But we are dealing with the human rights as a whole. So that the first generation, so to say, the first generation of human rights is the civil and political rights. So that, right to life, right to free from torture, or the right to fair trial, freedom of movement, freedom of expression. And these rights are related to the people's civil and political life. So that is a so-called first generation. And then the second generation that we are specifically talking about today is economic, social, and cultural rights. And I believe that the work that you are doing, through the work that you are doing, you may be more familiarized with this set of rights rather than the first set of rights. So that this include the right to work, right to just and favorable conditions of work, trade union rights, right to social security, right to an adequate standard of living, including food, housing, clothing, water, and sanitation, and also the right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, right to education, and cultural rights. So that these are broadly the two big sets of human rights, but also there are common, rights such as non-discrimination or the protection and assistance of family and mothers and children. And then the last one, the right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, that is regarded as the third generation of human rights. So that brings the environment and then the planetary dimension to the human rights. So that sort of determines the relationship between the human and the environment and planet in a more sustainable, harmonious way to interact. So that the next slide, please. So that, and then if you click the click once more, then the nature of human rights, as I said, well, we kind of conveniently divide the human rights in several categories, but these human rights are universal and inalienable and indivisible. So the firstly, the universal, the nature of human rights, the universality means that no matter where you live, where you are coming from, what is your cultural or religious or the national or racial or ethnic backgrounds you have, these human rights apply to everybody in everywhere. So that these human rights have a universal nature. And it is, and the human rights are also inalienable, which means that nobody can take away your human rights. And then the indivisible means that, as I said, that although we sometimes, divide the human rights, this group or that group, but they are all in one set. And then, which means that they are interdependent and interrelated, so that one rights can stand alone without interacting with other rights, or without any relationship with other rights. And then the next slide, please. So that the international human rights instruments have developed since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As some of you, wrote in the chat box, so that there are a number of international human rights conventions that are born from the Universal Declaration. The two big body of the law is, one is the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and the other one is International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So that including these three, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, they comprise the International Bill of Human Rights. So that please click once again. And you can see that, these three are the main, the instruments that cover the entire set of human rights. And from then on, other international conventions were developed with a specific focus on certain groups of people or certain topics. So that, as you know, that there is a convention on the rights of the child, the CRC, as many of you know. And then there is a convention on the discrimination against women and CEDAW. And then there is a convention focused on migrants and persons of disabilities and enforced disappeared people, and then the racial discrimination and torture and so on and so forth. So that we have more or less like 9 conventions under international law that provides the human rights. And then there is several UN Human Rights Declaration that has a specific focus on certain issues or certain groups of people. For example, as I mentioned earlier, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, that is one of the declaration which also be part of the international human rights instruments. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The economic, social, and cultural rights that we are talking about. And in the next slides, there is a list of the economic, social, and cultural rights. Right. So that these are the set of so-called economic, social, and cultural rights. So right to work, right to just and favorable conditions of work, trade union rights. These are related to labor issues. And then the right to social security is more or less the covering the social protection systems that many of you are working in and working with, I believe. And the rights of family, children, and mothers as well. And then rights to an adequate standard of living, which includes the adequate food, clothing, housing, all the living conditions. And then the right to health, that includes physical and mental health. And then healthcare system is a main area of interest under this right to health. And then right to education, that covers all levels of education, also including the vocational education and training. And then finally, the cultural rights. The cultural rights include a right to participate in cultural activities, and at the same time, right to benefit from the development of science and technology, and also the protection provided for the authors of the cultural or literature or the scientific authorship, the output or the productions. So among these economic, social, and cultural rights, I mean, which the rights are close to, to the work that you are doing on a daily basis. Can you type in the chat box, for example? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, when it comes to the economic, social, and cultural rights, and then there are several elements to it. The first, availability. So, okay, so that mental health, education, work, housing, yeah, they are relevant to you, right? Yes, okay, right to children and families, right? Okay, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for your input. Yeah, for example, shared that the mental health, education, work, and housing are relevant to your work. So that, for example, let's take an example of right to housing. Then availability means that whether the housings are available, the housing units are available to the people, and especially those who have less money and less economic means, whether the housing housing units are available to them. That is a big concern of the right to housing. Whether there is any social housing provided to those people who have less money or less means. And then secondly, accessibility. And if housing units are available to all people, including people with less economic means or with other difficulties, then whether those the housing units are accessible by these people, whether there is any discriminatory the effects or the discriminatory the measures that prevent people to access housing, or physical accessibility. For example, persons with disabilities, whether they are accessible to the housing units in terms of the accessibility to the housing, and at the same time accessibility to apply for social housing, for example. And then the third, economic accessibility, in other words, affordability, which is very important. And when there are a lot of housing units are available, but if the rental fees or the price for purchasing housing is way too high, then it is not accessible by many people. And then the information accessibility is also very important. And even if there are so many social housing units available, but if people don't have information to apply for the social housing, and then it doesn't mean anything to many people. And then the third, acceptability, which means that whether the housing, for example, the housing is acceptable to certain peoples, to all people, for example, persons with disabilities. If the housing, if the apartment or a house is not accessible physically by persons with disabilities, that it's not acceptable. And then the quality, of course, the giving the housing unit is not enough. Whether the housing unit comes with the quality utilities, and then the services, and then other facilities with it. So that these are four elements, we call it triple AQ framework, so that each the ESCI rights should make sure that these four elements are met to realize the ESCIs, whether it is a right to health or a right to education or right to housing, as I explained. Okay, to the next slide, please. Yeah, and then what is so unique about the human rights framework? So what is the difference between the human rights framework or other, framework? Do you have any thoughts about that? What do you think the human rights framework is different from social welfare framework? Or what is the difference between the human rights framework and development framework? Okay, let's go to the next slide. The main difference is that the human rights framework defines who has the right and who has the duty to fulfill. So that where there is a human right, and there is always a duty. So that it provides the framework of duty bearers and rights holders. So that mostly the people that we are working together and the people we are supporting in our daily work in the social work field, they are right holders, whether individuals or groups like indigenous peoples. And then the duty bearers are usually the government of the state, but not only. As Rory mentioned at the beginning, that we have a collective responsibility for human rights as well. So that there are states, the governments who are duty bearer, but at the same time, other than states, and there are other actors who have a responsibility as well, such as social workers, especially when you are working within the state institutions, or whether you have you are acting on behalf of the state institutions, even as an NGOs or in other types of organizations. Let's go to the next slide, please. So that the human rights framework provides three types of duties. The first one is duty to respect. This is basically you do not violate human rights. So abstain from impeding the exercise or the enjoyment of the rights by other peoples. The second duty is to protect. So that this is basically you prevent the third parties from interfering in the exercise of the rights by people. And then the third duty is the duty to fulfill. So basically this is the duty to adopt necessary measures for the full realization or exercise of rights, including through promotion, facilitation, and provisions. So the promotion means that the sharing and disseminating information and training for people to understand their rights, and then to know how to claim their rights, and then to seek remedies when their human rights are abused or violated. And facilitation means that means that the either states or other actors, they can develop the legislation or policies or programs and schemes to provide further the services to realize the rights, economic, social, and cultural rights. And the provision means that, for example, the social protection, people, there are quite a number of people who cannot contribute to the social protection systems because of the lack of financial resources or other reasons beyond their control. Then states, the government should step in to support them, either by providing some subsidies or preparing some other alternative options for them to get the social protection in this regard. And then the next slide. Sorry, going back to that, the previous slide, in terms of the duties, it is usually regarded that duties belong to the states, mainly the governments. But when you go through what those duties mean, and then to think about our work, and then to think about how the society is operating, and there are other people, as I mentioned earlier, other than the states, like business sectors or the social service institutions or the social service workers or NGOs, civil societies, or the trade unions, and there are other the actors and entities. They also share some of these duties and responsibilities, so that also has the implication for our work as well as a social workers. And then the next slide, please. Yeah, this is some additional duties or obligations of states when it comes to the economic, social, and cultural rights. The maximum available resource, the use of maximum available resources is the one particular obligation of states vis-a-vis the economic, social, and cultural rights. Because the implementation of economic, social, and cultural rights require quite substantial, resources, including financial resources, so that the government should make every effort to make a best use of their resources to realize the economic, social, and cultural rights, whether there is social protection or health or education or other economic, social, and cultural rights. And then also, the governments are not allowed to take any measures that move back the conditions of public services or the situations of the level of realization of ESCRs, backwards. It has to be always moving forward and not going backward. And even if it is the economic crisis or natural disaster, situations, but the states are not allowed to go back. But there are situations when they have to take some measures, retrogressive measures, and then they should follow the human rights standards to make to adopt those measures. And then the minimum core obligations, which means that even if you don't have sufficient resources, then there is the minimum essential level of each of the rights, whether the health or education or social protection, that you have to meet this minimum level of the obligations, and then moving from then to the full realization of the rights. And then the non-discrimination is a cross-cutting issues for all human rights, including ESCRs. And interestingly, the ESCR also imposed the international obligations on all relevant actors, including states and international organizations, so that the international assistance and cooperations are needed to support the countries that have less resources through the international assistance or the official development assistance and other forms of financial and other resources to meet those the ESCR obligations. And then the next. So that this having identifying the rights and duties, and then who are the right holders and then who are duty bearers, what that implies in reality. Because this framework, the right holders, rights and duties of the human rights provides accountability and remedy mechanisms, so that unlike other frameworks, for example, development frameworks such as SDGs or others, the human rights framework provides accountability mechanisms. So that if there is any problems in terms of human rights, and then there is someone who is responsible for that, and then those who are responsible should provide the remedies for the people who are negatively affected. So that this is a very strong mechanism. So that this is something that we as a human rights field, and also the social work field, we also need to focus more on this and then utilize this accountability mechanism to better the situation of people that we are supporting day to day. The next one, please. So why are social workers so important for the realization of human rights? The next slide, please. As Pradeep mentioned at the beginning, we are trying to redefine the role of social workers based on your redefinition of social work. For us, social workers are not just the social workers. Social workers are right holders themselves as a human being, so that you have all the entitlements to enjoy all the human rights that I mentioned that we went through earlier. And then secondly, the social workers are also duty bearers. So that they also carry the obligations under the human rights framework. So it is important to know what the duties, what those human rights duties are, as we just reviewed. And then thirdly, the social workers are enablers of human rights. This means that you are helping and supporting the people who need support, for example, persons with disabilities or older persons, children, women, migrant workers, or refugees and asylum seekers. So without your support, they cannot access the basic services, social services to realize their economic, social, and cultural rights and other rights. So that you actually enable them to enjoy their life, so that your role is really critical in this regard for many, many people. And that you are the catalyst for human rights, because you know the situation that anybody else, how the social policies or the programs are working, or which one is not working, one needs to be improved, and how to improve. You have all the experiences and knowledges, so that your experiences and knowledges and day-to-day the needs that you identify with the people that you support should be heard and reflected in the national or local or regional, the development plans and other plans, so that it's really critical. And then finally, the social workers are human rights defenders. So you are frontline with the people, so you know where the human rights violations are happening, who are the victims, and you have the information and knowledge to help those people to seek the address. So that these more or less you have like 5 roles to play in terms of human rights, so that your role is really critical to achieve the realization of human rights, and then to provide the very effective protection for the people on the ground. So finally, the last slide is again the first slide that I shared at the beginning, the definition of social work. And then just by showing this, I want to re-emphasize the close relationship between the human rights and social work, and how, it's not, I found that it's just learning about the human rights is not enough. And for us, we also need to know about the social work as well, so that we can develop the common narratives and common approach and common methodologies to improve the situation of human rights that we are working and supporting together. Thanks a lot. I think I overtime, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rin. Big applause to you. That was really an amazing introduction, and perfect for all of us to have this information and combining the human rights instruments and understanding with social work. And yes, it was a little bit longer than expected, but really, really deep insights. And I think we should share this presentation also afterwards for those who are coming later, like who will join us for the second session, so that they get really this foundation of information. Thank you so much for that. I think all of you who participate could see how well that matches together. All the information that we got from Rin, and how much we share as social workers with the OHCHR understanding. And Rin, you mentioned so many insightful tools and understanding. And also, did you mention that social workers are human rights defenders? And I know that Vasilios and his colleague have prepared the next presentation on exactly that topic. So we are delighted to now focus on that specific part of social work. And Vasilios, you said that you're able to share the screen because you have got the host opportunities from our colleagues. So let's see if it works. Perfect. Thank you. So pass it over to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Priska, and all colleagues and friends and representatives of the UN ecosystem. Is really, your presence is really important in this event. And of course, a special thanks to Young Rin Kim, because indeed provided this very helpful context and the foundation indeed for understanding social work's role in a complex environment. So in the current presentation, myself and my good colleague Konstantinos Roussos, we will present the preliminary findings of a conceptualization and research on exactly what the previous presentation described, the role of social workers as human rights defenders. And as we'll explain, this role, important, crucial as it is, it does come with risks. And as a community, as a profession, we need to know how to deal with the risks and support our colleagues. So I will go to full screen now. I also like to say that my colleague at the moment is experiencing unstable Wi-Fi connection. So if he disappears from the screen, as we said, social workers are always steadfast and will find the solution immediately, and I'll carry on. Great. As I already said, the focus of this presentation is on making sense of social work, the profession of social work as the human rights profession, and the implication for this. And in particular, we will demonstrate, actually for the first time in public, so it's a great opportunity for us to get some feedback. Our social work at risk database is a database that records, creates a mapping of incidents that relate to social workers, as human rights defenders who've been persecuted or experienced violence, which has been supported by modest funding from the University of Essex. But I'd like to start the presentation with a very short story, because we talk a lot about numbers, and later on we'll talk statistics, and we discuss the legal frameworks. But as Rory Truell said in his introduction, all these this complex terminology or the statistical elements refer to actual people and people's lives, and it's always very important to speak about the frontline practitioners and the people we work with who experience and navigate the complexities and the dangers of the system. And there are many examples of wonderful social workers who, over the years, they did wonderful human rights work, and my students, some of them, they're here today. They know all too well that very often in my lectures, I use the example, among others, I use the example of Irina Sendler, a Polish Jewish social worker who 5 years before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, so that's before the 1948 declaration, she developed this wonderful human rights work. While she worked in the Warsaw Ghetto. And the Nazi authorities wanted her and other social workers to identify children of Jewish heritage. And of course, we all know, and we know all too well what happened to these children identified by the Nazi regime. So Irina Sendler, having a very good understanding of her role and the sides she should take, she organized a resistance movement. In today's terms, we would use the human rights element, of course. And she supervised literally the, in inverted commas, the smuggling of over 3,000 children through false documents who were saved from the ghetto, and they were sent to safety, mostly in the United States and Latin America. More than 2,500 children were saved. You know, their lives were saved through the work of this wonderful social worker. In 1944, she was arrested and she was tortured. She actually, she narrowly escaped execution. There's a wonderful documentary entitled Life in a Jar, and I would definitely recommend that everybody watches this embodiment of a human rights defender. So in the history of our profession, as we already established, there has been a very important and determined practice towards supporting the rights of the people we work with, but the rights of our colleagues and social workers at the same time. So social work is a profoundly political activity, and as such, a human rights-based activity. And the work we do with our research team suggests, as the previous presentation already very eloquently put, the ex vitermini, that by definition, social workers, due to their role and their duties and the expectations, they are covered by the provisions of the Declaration of Human Rights Defenders, or they should be covered. This declaration provides for the support and protection of human rights defenders. So people who do human rights-based work need to be defended and supported, because it's a very risky environment, as we'll explain in a few minutes. This declaration outlines the specific duties of states towards supporting human rights defenders, although, as we'll see later on, states often are the key perpetrators of violating defenders' rights in specific contexts. And of course, this approach is based on the human rights standards enshrined in international instruments, already very well described in the previous presentation. So there's no need for me to repeat the framework. So as a summary, in this first part of the presentation, I want our students, our colleagues, to remember that social workers are human rights defenders due to their role, the integral advocacy element in their role, due to the instruments we described before, and of course the UN and the UN ecosystem recognition that explicitly acknowledges social workers' role in promoting human rights, and of course the global recognition through the broader global NGO system and trade union that very often recognize the importance of social work in defending human rights, and they intervene in the process of protecting social workers. I think I'll hand over to my colleague Kostis, if he's able to. Kostis?
I think I'm able to. Yes, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. So I will just deactivate my video just to make sure that my connection will not be interrupted. And so just to follow up from what Vasilios was saying, our idea then was to create a database that would allow us to capture actually, or map, if you will, various incidents that they are related to social work, especially in a context of risk, and we will explain this a bit further in the next slides. So the idea for creating the SWORD, Social Work at Risk database, actually is to have a tool through which we will monitor, we will be able to analyze different incidents of violent events against social workers, and through this analysis and through the links and possible networks that we will be able to establish to formulate collective responses to those threats worldwide, as you see here on the slide. So our idea is that this network, this forum, if you will, of course, operates on the ground of social work values, social justice, and human rights. At the core of the social work mission, of course, with fairness, transparency, and accountability. And actually, we think that this database will allow us to showcase how we follow these core values and ideals. So basically, we have 4 operational strategies, but here to summarize, we have put the most important 2 of them. So monitoring and analysis, we want to maintain and keep our database up to date. For this, what we're trying to do is actually to capture all incidents that they are publicly available, either through the news or maybe through the work that certain organizations do to capture this, or actually through our connections with specific national or local social work associations. And then, as I said, this allows us to coordinate and support and formulate strategies to respond collectively as the social work ecosystem to the threats that social workers are facing. So next slide. Yeah. I think that Vasilios is trying now to share the screen of our database. So this is how it looks when you're entering. Of course, this is under construction still, but we are in a good position now to present. So as you see here, this is a global map. And from our work, we were able to include a first, let's say, data mapping for several countries and regions. And as you see here, we are capturing 3 main categories of incidents. We are capturing abuse. We are capturing fatal violence, killings, and persecution. If you click in each incident, as Vasilios has done here, this is a case from Greece when 33 NGO workers were charged of espionage or violating the Greek state secrets, actually, when they were trying to, by working in the support of refugees and immigrants arriving to Greece. So you see the type of incident at the top that it mentions criminal charges, the year of the incident, the date, and the profession. Some of them, most of them, of course, are social workers. In some cases, we're capturing also other professions such as NGO workers or humanitarian workers in some of the cases. For each incident, as you see the different colors, we have also this color mapping. And in total, so far, we were able to document 78 incidents. In many of them, they are involved more than 1 social workers. So the number is bigger, but this is how it looks. It's a brief look. And of course, we have thoughts of how to develop this database further. We can discuss this more and, of course, create links. So I will pass it now. Oh, no, it's still me. Right? Yes, it's still me.
It's you.
So, yeah. So, as you see, as I was saying, we have 78 major and publicly reported incidents in 20 countries. We're focusing over a period of 20 years, so 2004, 2024. And by looking at this data and by analyzing the the cases there, and also from our experience in different research projects with social workers or everyday experiences, we often hear and we often see many social workers sharing stories and experiences with users of services that reflect mutual mistrust, maybe hostility, physical and psychological abuse, or even violence. Also at the same time, we hear stories that social workers find themselves practicing in very hostile social, political, or even legal environments. And this is linked to both the work that practitioners want to do, and also even to the people that they support, right? So we see this creating a paradoxical situation with some key contradictions, two of them captured here. So we see social workers that they find themselves at risk with service users, state authorities, and in many cases, even parastatal organizations. And our intention in this mapping is not actually to highlight just the particularities of its individual case, or to identify the countries that that social workers might be at risk. Rather, our key aim, our main aim, is actually to offer a visual representation of the intensity of those issues that will allow us to problematize violence against social workers as a political and social phenomenon. So this is actually linked to social workers' perceived roles, the different roles that social workers might take, but also the roles that other agencies see them having in conjunction to interpretation of social work professional requirements and ethical principles in both national and international contexts. Vasily.
Yeah, so thank you, Kosti. Categorizing those cases and those instances was not an easy exercise, and it still isn't, because there is a significant amount of overlap between the regions and the context. But for academic purposes and being more analytical, and as we write the report that we'll share with all of you in a few weeks when we officially launch the database, we have two broad categories. One we expected, and one that came as a bit of a surprise, really, as Kostis will explain later, that we didn't expect. So as one would expect, armed and political conflict, violence, war is one of the main reasons why social workers who try to do the human rights-based work are being targeted and attacked. Now, if we were to geographically locate those incidents, one would say that consistently Latin American, the southern corner of the American continent, sadly, consistently appears in these statistics. And this is a historical phenomenon. If we go back, we don't have a historical layer, but our ambition is to include a historical layer that goes back 50 years. One will see these processes of, and these legacies of transition to and from authoritarian regimes and military dictatorships created an environment very dangerous for social workers. And as I say, historically very dangerous. We have a number of disappearances, a number of arbitrary detentions, and paramilitary killings. I mean, the legacy of these authoritarian regimes in Latin America is linked to the operation of paramilitary groups, often tolerated by the state. And of course, one, again, if you follow with the news, as one would expect, Palestine also appears as a country where as a state, systematically social workers' rights are being at risk. And again, we have a high number of administrative detention, which in fact is really a state of extrajudicial detention for social workers, very often without following through fair trial proceedings. It's important to say that we have not incorporated data post-October 2023 in Gaza, and this is because it's the process of verifying names. As we said, we only include verified cases. has been very difficult. So we believe that we'll be able to include cases from Palestine that are verified in the 2024 report. There is in recent 3 or 4 years, we have monitored a slight increase in incidents that involved China. So this is, if you follow with the human rights literature, this is more or less what one would expect. This echoes other reports from other professions and other organizations. I will hand over to Kostis to say about a relatively unexpected twist in this data analysis.
Yes. So in our data, among other countries, let's say in Europe and in the Americas, we see a high number of incidents appearing in the US and in the UK the last years. And when we were trying to make sense about this, reading the literature, talking with different colleagues, and also reading about the incidents, for us, it made sense to connect this rise to actually the liberalization of various state and institutional practices. Of course, this is related to the global financial crisis of the previous decade in both countries. Of course, they are different, those countries. In the US, we can claim that maybe there was never such a thing as a strong welfare state, while in the UK, we can think of a period of time that we had a stronger welfare state. But the crisis, austerity politics, actually created a space in which services and practices that have been designed to redistribute wealth or to support the most vulnerable, if you will, actually seem now to be used to maintain and reproduce neoliberal socioeconomic restructuring. So in this sense, both the individual, but also the state becomes a space of management. In this way, we can see the deregulation of markets in favor of capital. Let's say we see often public sector outsourcing to private firms and the third sector even, and of course quasi markets in welfare provisioning, even in social work service in some cases. And this happens often to increase or to enhance consumer choice or value for money in welfare services. And so this creates workplace conditions that actually are very difficult for social workers to navigate, from starting from labor rights, salaries, infrastructures, and resources. We see that all of this have an impact on material and emotional well-being of social workers, as well as in the ways that they can support meaningfully the users of the services. And it's not only that, we think that it is important to consider what is the impact also of such framing and such policy and practice field in creating further exclusions and marginalizations of some of the most vulnerable members of our society. These groups, as we know, are always at the center of several moralizing and individuating, let's say, discourses linked to governmental logics, but also state logics. And this actually make these major problems that individuals confront in their lives being thought as their own creation. So we see here some logics of responsibilization, if you will. So individuals are solely responsible for them. So from poverty to unemployment to food security, physical and mental health, also gender or racial discrimination, to mention just a few. All of those issues often are constructed in public discourses, in state discourses, as personal and moral issues. So so here we see how those two areas actually are interconnected when we're thinking maybe countries such as the US and the UK to create a hostile environment, a risky environment for social workers to practice.
Before I move to the last slide, can I also highlight the importance of the gun proliferation in the US? Because in the US, we have the highest number of social work killings.
Yes, of course.
Workers are being killed as part of the work. So it's the mix of chronic underfunding and discrimination that Kostis described with easy access to guns. I mean, that's very important.
Yes.
And we only have 2-3 minutes, Kostis, for the last slide. Yeah.
No, I think that we don't need to expand. So mainly, I will just say that we're thinking here, or what we can think here is that often in this environment, social work seems to be linked to, at least from a government perspective or from a state perspective, as a mechanism to govern their life or illegality in other ways. And this might make us think in more theoretical terms, issues that they have to do with this idea of the state of exception or biopolitics. So in this way, we think that there are many policy, social, and legal environments that force social workers to actually seek to govern biological life in this sense without thinking, yes, as I said, the thickness of the biographical life of the people that we're working with and the social workers themselves, but also the complexity of the history and the social environment. And I will leave it here.
Great, thank you very much for attending the presentation.
Thank you, Konstantinos and Vasilios, for this wonderful presentation. Excellent to bring that so close together. And as we've heard from Rin, that social workers are human rights defenders, but also duty holders. So we have like seeing also that how social workers are treated, that has also an impact on how they can fulfill their role, and the people we work with are also affected by that. And Rin has written some comments, and she also had a question. I think, Rin, if you want to say something directly or raise a question to Vasilios and Konstantinos, that would be probably the best final question to raise. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. And then I feel a little bit guilty to take too much of time. Because I really so much appreciate your presentation, and then that really rings a lot of alarm bells in our mind. And then my question was that I put in the chat box is that and I think this is extremely important to you actually. I mean, to get the concrete instance of the violations of human rights of social workers, and then, as we said, that social workers themselves are, right, right holders, and then their rights should be respected. And then my question here is that how, I mean, how you have dealt, I mean, how these cases have been dealt with, whether, those cases, I'm sure that those cases were brought to the, the criminal proceedings or, the whatever, the possible ways. Because I mean, this is also linked to the next session that we're gonna have next week, how to utilize the UN human rights mechanisms to deal with the critical violations of human rights against the social workers. So that was my question. And then the second thing, I mean, the main causes of the violations against the social workers is the neoliberalized the environment. That is something that our office is also focusing on through its human rights economy lens. And then so that it was kind of reinforcing in the thinking, and then the approach of the office has developed so far to address these issues. And then it is really, I mean, again, alarming and good to know what impact it has on the work on social workers. And then there, there are also operations as a, the human rights defenders and then social workers at the same time. So I will stop here. Thanks so much for this very interesting, useful, presentation. It was very, instructive. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Vassilios.
Yeah, very. Thank you so much for your very positive feedback and, of course, the meaningful questions. Now as a data, as a small network, we haven't responded. We're only mapping and analyzing, but of course the social work profession through the IFSW national associations in the past have tried to raise awareness, to liaise with oftentimes with the UN and other human rights organizations. But you know what? It's how you handle. There's not one size fits all, right? Because in some cases, mobilizing as a global community helped, like in the cases of Greece, Turkey, Hungary. In other regions, mobilizing would put the individuals at risk. So we needed to use more discreet ways of lobbying and supporting individuals. And of course, we share this information with IFSW. I'm personally a commissioner in IFSW, and I always share this information. And I think it's not news to most people that IFSW is in the process of re-establishing or establishing a social workers' rights commission who will be focusing on those issues with the most systematic and consistent ways, and will be sharing with them information so we can coordinate activity. And the final comment, about the neoliberalization, as I said, both Kostis and I, as academics, we have, of course, researched the impact of the financial crisis in Europe and the US, but I think it always comes as a surprise to see how the impact of this crisis in yet another domain of social and professional life, with the increased number of abuse and killings, of social workers, and of course with the discrimination service users face. It is interesting. We're still in the process of refining data, but it would be interesting to say that if you compare similar contexts, for example, the UK and the US with the Nordic countries, more or less similar ratio, similar amount of social workers per 100,000 populations, you will see that we don't have similar trends in the Nordic countries. So that says something about the legacies of universal access to welfare and healthcare. So these are all issues that we're of course in the process of analyzing, and as we said before, in a few weeks we'll be able to share through a report. So thank you so much for attending the presentation and for your meaningful questions.
Okay. Well, I think Vassilios, that was same for you, a good connecting point with RIN and OHCHR. And let's see how we can further develop on that and collaborating on that, because I know from RIN also that the UN is also interested in having this narrative of social workers' experience and bringing that really to a UN level. That is an essential part of bringing all those narratives, all those experience that we have and that we collect, and US research really professionally collect all those data. That's what the UN is looking for. So I see Rin nodding. So I think we go on with that. But for all of you, I warmly thank you for attending this first session. And for me, it was a wonderful start because we have got a good foundation with the UN instruments and the combination of UN instruments and social work understanding. I look much forward, I think, together with Rin, and we look much forward to welcome you again next week, same time, same place. Well, I won't be here next week, so I'll show you another background. You can share this information and invite colleagues, because what we do is we share this recorded video to you afterwards as soon as we have it, so that all those 450 or those who couldn't attend today, that can watch it afterwards and prepare for next week, but then it's still open for other people to attend this course or spread the news. And thank you so much for attending, be with us, and looking forward to see you next week. Okay, bye-bye, my colleagues.